Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here. You guys know what time it is. Time to talk about current events in the online fitness community. And I'm going to cover something that's going to be a bit of social commentary today. It's not necessarily just about a specific current event, but it relates to a topic of some people actually get shocked that I actually give natural bodybuilding a hard time, as if there could be anything possibly wrong with that. So let me go ahead and put on my +5 hat of speechcraft and let's talk about this. Because, the thing is, people will hear me say it like, wow, you're just being a hater. But it's like, if you go look up sometimes what a hater is, that's a word people throw out there for someone who's giving you some cold, hard truth that maybe you don't want to hear. Right? That's oftentimes what it is. Or so that people can mask their own wrongdoings and just call the person who's calling them out on it a hater. Right? It's not necessarily jealousy. So let's come over to the point with the whole natural bodybuilding thing. And there's a reason I'm not real big on it. Now, the idea sounds real good, doesn't it? But let's come over and let's talk about marketing when we come to that. Because obviously, if you're going to market something from a marketing perspective, it should sound like a really good idea, right? It needs to sound marketable. It needs to sound good. What's the idea here? Natural bodybuilding. Because anabolic abuse has become so rampant in the normal bodybuilding world that health is compromised, that it's risky, that it's a massive health, financial, and legal risk for the competitors at every single level of it, all the way down to the local amateur level, right? And that's generally what's put forward. So therefore, let's make everybody's health better. Let's make everyone's health better. We'll just have drug testing or natural bodybuilding where people don't have to use stuff. Well, who do you guys think came up with this idea? Meaning maybe some bodybuilders might have come up with this idea. But who actually funds it? In other words, you can't have dozens or hundreds of shows without corporate sponsorship. And this is where we're going to jump over to the point. Someone might have come up with the idea with good intentions, but when it comes over to other stuff, there's corporate sponsorship. Well, who sponsors this stuff? Supplement companies. Why? Because they understand that at a certain threshold, they know when they're putting up guys who are obviously using copious amounts of illicit substances on their covers or their spokesmen or their sponsored athletes, what's going to happen, right? People look at that and go, come on, bro, come on. So they got behind this idea real quick, right? As soon as you started seeing natural bodybuilding become a thing, they had corporate sponsorship immediately. Now, I'm going to prove right up front that it has nothing to do with health. And here's why. People will say, what do you mean? It's healthier. Not really. It's marginally healthier. I'm not saying it's not healthier, but it is not healthy and is actually quite dangerous to your health. Quite dangerous to your health. And look at the body fat standards they set. In other words, you go look at what every medical doctor and professional and everyone in the world knows is a healthy body fat level, an athletic body fat level. If you are at a healthy body fat level, can you win a natural bodybuilding show? No. You can't, because you'll be too fat, or as they'll call it, not conditioned enough. That's the incorrect term. But you're not conditioned enough. You're too fat when you're at an amazingly healthy, like for someone who is at peak body fat for health and fitness, peak body fat for athleticism, right? The sort of body fat you would want to win gold medals in a lot of Olympic sports, the sort of body fat you would want to have perfect lipid profiles, hormone profiles, cholesterol, right? Peak fitness and peak performance body fats is too fat to compete. That's too much body fat to compete in natural bodybuilding. So how is it about health? It's not about health. Why do they get that standard? Because the drug bodybuilding world started getting so shredded and so lean with the paper-thin skin that became the bodybuilding standard. So what they did, they didn't say, hey, let's just reinvent some stuff that's going to be healthier. Let's go back to maybe an older classic concept of what we know as classic aesthetics and looks good and is healthy and fit and all that, right? They just continued to carry over the drug-abusing bodybuilder world, judging criteria, and just said, we're just going to test for drugs, right? That's what they did. And they don't even score people down who are obviously using stuff who can pass the drug test, if they bother to test them. So you look at this whole situation, you say, well, wait a minute, it's not really healthy. They're not promoting health. All they're doing is gimmicking no drugs. It's natural. Well, and that sucks a lot of people in. There's a lot of people who hear that and they go compete and they're passionate about natural bodybuilding, but they don't seem to realize oftentimes that it's still just a vehicle to sell supplements. You might be passionate about it, even the other competitors might be passionate about it, but it's still promoting bad health. It's still promoting bad health at a very serious level. And the difference here, people say, well, what about strength sports? Well, because strength sports don't require by default for you to become unhealthy to be competitive. And that's the difference. And I'm not saying there aren't risks with strength sports. There's risk with every sport. Anything that's competitive carries a degree of risk. Okay? That is understood. Everyone gets that. The difference is, we'll just take my sport, powerlifting, right? Take powerlifting, for example. Powerlifting doesn't have an inherent damage guaranteed to your body, right? Other than maybe knee wraps divisions. And we could argue about that. That's one reason I say, hey guys, don't do knee wraps divisions, right? So it's not the best of ideas. It causes damage to your body over time. Probably shouldn't do that. So we could look at the normal raw powerlifting and say, well, if everyone's form is on point, fatigue management is on point, they're not doing stupid stuff, your injury risk is actually very low. It's extremely low. Again, it's usually doing stupid things. The problem is that there's nothing inherently dangerous about squatting to a 1-rep max with good form and good fatigue management. There's nothing inherently dangerous about bench pressing to a 1-rep max with spotters. Again, barring freak accidents. It's actually not even risky, even in the scientific literature. It's not actually dangerous, per se, any more than normal heavy training. But it is dangerous to diet down to 6% body fat. The actual judging standards require you to be successful to harm yourself. And it's physical harm, like damage to organs over time, damage to your endocrine system, damage to your psychological health, because the hormones and everything else are impacted by that to a point to where it causes depression, anxiety, sex drive loss, sexual dysfunction, and that's just the immediate hormonal sides of it. That's the hormonal end of it. What happens when we come over to the other psychological ends? They promote such a level of leanness that it leads to enormous numbers of additional eating disorders. Right? I knew a guy, and I pulled the interview because he sent me a thing requesting me because he was doing some other stuff in business and he wasn't comfortable with that interview being up, and I respected that because that's fair, right? You can't knock a guy who says, hey, I did an interview years ago, but now that I'm older, more mature, could you please take that down, just because I don't know if it really puts on the public face I want. And that's fair. That's totally fair, because he was a much younger guy. A guy who went and did his first natural bodybuilding show, and he developed a serious eating disorder as a result of it, like to the point to where he obsessed over if he should count the carbs in his packet of Splenda in his coffee or not. Right? It caused him an enormous amount of anxiety and problems, and that's really common. So you have that, and then we look at it and say, okay, so all of this, what's the point? Well, it's still just being used to pimp supplements. It exists not to improve people's health. It's propped up by the supplement industry to sell products. And that's exactly what it's used for. It's used to sell products. And guys, I'm not against marketing. I'm not against business. But let's just call it what it is. I'm not even making a judgment call there. But let's look at what it is. It is nothing more than a vehicle to sell products that may or may not be worthless based upon now the natural status of these bodybuilders. Because everyone knows the other guys, at least everyone other than really naive kids, anyone who's been lifting at all for any degree of time knows that nothing that those bodybuilders sell or utilize is responsible for their results. It's pure drugs and genetics. Even the way they train doesn't even matter that much for the most part. I'm not saying it doesn't, but it's not the degree of factor that you think it is. So you have that, and then they needed something else to market, and it allows people to sell a lot of worthless products. Now, am I saying that selling products is always bad? No. You know what? If it's something that's useful, which the majority of supplements are not, then all right, fair play. You're using something for marketing purposes. You want to sell your workout program that is effective and it's a reasonable price, okay, fair enough. If people don't realize that most good workout programs, at least for novice lifters, are free already, then, buyer beware. If you can get something for free versus paying for it, you haven't researched to find out yet that something is free, that's kind of fair game on you. You kind of deserve to lose your money because you didn't even take the time to find out if you could get the same quality of product for free. Right? You chose to pay for something. It's a conscious choice you made. So there's that, meal plans, coaching services. Okay, I get all that. Some of that is actually valid. Some of it's viable. But you need to keep in mind it is still also used for the purpose of selling garbage products that are not necessarily responsible for the results. At the end of the day, you'd be surprised how many guys on a natural bodybuilding stage are still using anabolics, or still using Clen, or still using all these other things. They're just using lesser amounts. And in some cases, they're not even using lesser amounts than the big boys. They just don't have the same genetics the big boys have. They might actually literally in some cases be using almost as much stuff. They're just not as genetically gifted, so they do natural bodybuilding instead. But it's just being used to sell products, guys. It's nothing more than a vehicle for marketing. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.